Is November 5th, 2025. This is What is HOA? What is HOA is brought to you by Zayuk Smart Property System. Zayuk is a property management technology company that provides inspection services and software for HOAs, condo associations, property associations. It is a tool that gives you tools to manage your contracts, your invoices, your reserves, your asset hygiene, and give you an overview of what your property is. We do that through reality captures and 3D models and survey grade level models of your property for property owners, for portfolio managers, for property managers, any any stakeholder, construction, people, HOA construction, property construction companies that want to manage their portfolios and give their customers deliverables which their customers will find value in. So in What is HOA, we usually go through various current events in uh, in HOAs around the United States. And here we have one instance as reported by Gulf Coast News Now. Let me just put this. Give me one moment, everyone. Just get some better lighting. There we go. And boom, boom, boom. All right, there we go. All right. Punta Gorda woman accused of stealing 7.5K from neighborhood HOA. Punta Gorda, Charlotte County Sheriff's Office on September 25th, deputies responded to a report of money being taken from the neighborhood's HOA bank account. Social Club HOA had withdrawn funds from the HOA's account without authorization. Told deputies that the bank had contacted her directly and expressed concern over suspicious activity in the HOA account. That's good that the bank had those protocols in place. 2 checks, one in the amount of $3,500 and one in the amount of $4,000 were made and signed. Made out to and signed. And this individual was removed from their role as the treasurer and then arrested Monday and faces a charge of grand theft. So there are many providers, bank providers, financial providers that give you the tools to be able to stop that. And it's difficult when that seemed like a blatantly poor way to go about embezzling funds. If you wanted to do that more intelligently, you could. There are many ways, not just straight up writing a check to yourself. But regardless, it's 2025. I mean, it's 2025. I have another live stream that was previously called Information Technology Now and has changed to Cyber and Hacking. And it's about one of the major themes that continually rises up in cybersecurity, in information security, is that there is really a lack of privacy in 2025, and especially on the internet, but off the internet as well, through things like door cameras, dashboard cameras, many types, police officer cameras, body cameras. There are just so many cameras everywhere, security cameras everywhere, that it's almost at any instance, if you're in a metropolitan area, you are, or yes, I would say a suburban area too, possibly, you're not in nature, there's going to be a chance that that you're being recorded. And that's true with things like this. Financial transparency is at an all-time high. You see that with instances like the prediction market scandals in sports, where there's some sort of event where one individual is able to change their play or their coaching style to accommodate the prediction market outcome, and then But immediately the technology understands there's no transparency, especially ones like Polymarket, although the ones that have been referenced recently didn't use blockchain, but there is no real form of privacy anymore. And that's the same with finances, and especially in a system like HOA, where, before Facebook, before mobile banking, before a lot of networking that is able to be social networking or financial networking occurred. And as we move into the Genius Act, which holds a lot of initiatives to include Bitcoin, stablecoin, things of that nature, huge pillars of that, of cryptocurrency, is financial transparency. And in a system like homeowners associations, 2025, maybe 20 years ago, doing something like that would be easier, embezzling funds to a private organization that you own. But frankly, in 2025, it's not so simple or easy, and you're very likely going to get caught. So here you see one person did get caught, and that seemed like it was in Charlotte. Uh, Something else that doesn't have to do with finances or of that nature, but is actually asset hygiene related, and something that is directly related to Zayuk's inspection services. And this was in Eustis. Eustis HOA engineers are coming up with a plan after a bridge partially collapsed and forced 20 Eustis families to evacuate from their homes. That's very serious. Residents in Spring Ridge Estates forced to leave their homes Thursday night and haven't been allowed back since. The bridge is the only way in and out of their subdivisions privately owned by the Spring Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. So, Eustis, I believe, is a suburb of Florida. I'm sorry, Orlando. That's what I've interpreted. Let me just make sure that's true. And Florida has the most insidious form of all of this, just HOAs. So it is a suburb. It's really far out. It's not too close to Orlando, in truth, but it is closer to Orlando than, say, Tampa or Miami. Uh, with that said, they owned a bridge, and that bridge was their access point to their homes. And that access point broke. Huge. They own that bridge. The reality is, do they have enough money to handle that? It seems like this may have been a smaller association, and that's, again, adds to the larger insidious aspects of owning an HOA, having to deal with the asset management, having these assets break. Something like this is pretty extreme. So we'll continue. Only way in and out of their subdivision. Residents were told the HOA already had an insurance claim out on the bridge, but engineer on site couldn't answer questions about a timeline for repairs or possible costs. Inspecting the bridge and answering questions during an informal meeting hosted by the HOA. Over the weekend, the city of Eustis said they were working to support repair efforts by diverting water to protect utilities, including water and sewer lines located beneath the bridge. The pictures of it are pretty extreme. You can check out our social media page, Zayuk Real Estate on Instagram, to see something. See some. The bridge collapsed, and yeah, there are utility resources below the bridge. And again, this is, you want to catch this before you need an insurance claim, because that's going to be a huge insurance claim. And yes, you want insurance to be able to handle emergencies like that, but there's a possibility that that may have been preventable. I would, you don't know until you're there, but very likely, if there had like, I mean, we're going to find out the reports, I'm sure, in the coming months to years, and I don't want to assume anything, and I shouldn't assume anything, but you as a property manager can add huge value, and I'm going to bring in the plug to Zayuk here by, and we actually got a new logo. I'm going to change that. By using our software to understand the literal assets. That's what a reality capture inspection does. And we combine that with your reserve study inspection, which in a place like Florida is now required through various Senate bills that have been passed in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. And we can provide you deliverables that include survey grade level inspections of all of your different locations, exterior elements, interior elements as well, and give you the documentation of your property in human interpretable, and most importantly, not most importantly, but also very importantly, AI interpretable models. And these models will give you the tools to both visualize your problems, communicate your problems more effectively in meetings, your monthly meetings, communicate your problems more effectively to your vendors, and give yourself better tools to manage your assets and give you the transparency. And again, we're going to go back to this transparency aspect. There is very little privacy anymore, and this includes being on an HOA board. So on HOA boards, some people may say they have incentives to not be as transparent because they hold a lot of power, and they have, which they do, boards have a lot of power. And so as a HOA member, if you're a member and not looking to be on the board, one of the most important initiatives you can have to protect your asset is being really involved in the election processes to say who is running this thing, and be really involved in the vendor appropriation processes. And Zayuk gives you the protocols to do that. And we have a voting system, we have a vendor management system, we have a ticketing system that coordinates with our vendor management system and gives your property the tools to distribute information. And you, as a member who may not want to be super involved because it's a huge commitment, it's tough, but you want to make sure your asset is being managed and governed appropriately. And it's not obvious, the system, the HOA system, the property management system, it's not an obvious system when you first buy into it. And it's a business. HOA is a business. So many people invest in HOA, consider it real estate, consider it their real estate, and they must understand that you purchased a portion of a business that usually has a unit allocated to that portion you purchased, that you own the interiors of that unit, but there are many common spaces that must be managed across the business. And that business is often a nonprofit organization registered with your state, and understanding that business that you purchased into is critical. And it goes to three pillars I often speak about, which is one, asset hygiene. And when we talk about this collapse in Eustis, I'm going to just bring up Zayuk Real Estate real quick. That sort of asset hygiene. Is the pavement well maintained? Does it look like there's wear and tear on the asphalt? Are the sidewalks level? Is the landscaping upkept? Is the paint being upkept? Or does it look like there's a lot of wear and tear at the base? Okay, here we go. Da, da, da. So here it is. So you can see the sewer line below. There's the bridge. Army Corps of Engineers and the city of Eustis helped them out. and it's a pretty serious collapse. And if there's only if there's only, you know, 20 units, that's it. That's going to be a huge issue. So first thing we say is asset hygiene, making sure the asset hygiene of the unit is appropriate. We're going through a few things, and a lot of these are difficult to interpret, but not really. This is kind of curb appeal. How does the stair exterior elevated elements, the balconies, the stairs, the fences, are they being upkept? Does it look like it's tearing down? Okay, well, if it looks like it's tearing down, then you go to the second pillar, which is financial hygiene. How do you interpret the financial hygiene of a nonprofit organization, HOA? Well, you ask for the budgets, you ask for the reserve studies over the last 3 or 4 years, you ask if there's been any assessments over the last 3 or 4 years, because that might be difficult to interpret from the finances and from the budgets. You ask what was the purpose for those assessments. And in 2025, it's also best to ask, have there been any insurance hikes in the last 5 years? And if so, what were the reasons for those insurance hikes? Additionally, you can move forward and ask, what are the projected budget increases in the next 4 to 5 years? What are the projected reserves? What are the reserves looking like? So what are the upcoming projects, for this community? They should have probably, I shouldn't say this. I should really not assume anything. We'll find out what happened. There's a chance that this may have been negligence, but it may not have been. But many communities do hold just, and it's difficult because when no one owns it, then when everyone owns something, no one owns something. And that, I believe, is a one of something I've heard that's occurred throughout the military, where someone is always in charge of initiatives within the military, because when everyone owns an initiative, no one owns an initiative. So when you have a single point of contact for that, then everyone is able to work through that single point of contact. And Zayuk provides a great single point of contact. We have a lot of modules, voting, payments. We bring in protocols for your managers and your vendors so you can begin to own your data. This is the most important. And we're creating decentralized protocols. We're creating models that we expect the industry to probably adopt, because it's getting to a point where you need to own your data. You need to own your data, and Zayuk provides you the tools to manage your data, to own your data, for your property to own its data. It's difficult because a lot of HOA management is about, resident to association, and association to vendor payments, and it goes a bit deeper than that. And the base of it is giving your property and your assets a profile. And we do that. We do that through our reserve study inspections. We're one of the few software companies that come to your property, because we understand, when it comes to property ownership and property management and the modern tools that we are given, we're able to do things that, frankly, weren't possible before, which means we should do that. That includes taking the reserve study inspection and combining it with the reality capture inspection, documenting the hygiene of your roofs, documenting the hygiene of your balconies, and going back to the second pillar of understanding HOAs, which is finances. So when you understand the reserves, what are the projects upcoming? Is there enough money in the reserves accounts to meet those projects? If not, will it be available at that time? And if not, is it looking like there's going to be a special assessment needed in that time? And they're going to be able to determine, all right, so my HOA fees are this much when I purchase, but in the next 3 to 5 years, they may go up an amount that I did not account for. And then I was also forced to pay this special assessment, which I did not account for. And these become huge issues for unsuspecting HOA homeowners, where they did not expect to pay a special assessment. They don't even really understand why they're paying a special assessment, which is unfortunate. And it comes down to communication, and Zayu gives protocols to provide more effective communication between all. Oh, that wasn't that. All members of the community. All right, we'll move on. So Eustace, da da da. All right, we spoke about this. Contingency plans in place should the sewer main line fail. And equipment is already staged in the event the bridge deteriorates further. So this makes sense as to why the city got involved and the Army Corps of Engineers involved when you have main utility sewer lines going through the property and possibly be affected by the property. And this is you know I'll just continue. And I believe we spoke about the two pillars of what to understand when you purchase into an HOA. Did my camera? Oh, great. And the third, which I didn't touch on, but is really important, is governance. So before you purchase into an HOA, especially if you're going to live on the property, understanding governance is critical. If you don't live on the property, then it may be it may be more mute of a point than when you live on the property. If you live on the property, you're going to have to, regardless if you're a member of an association, you have to own and manage the property in accordance with the governance, which means you might not be able to rent out your community for 3 to 7 days on Airbnb. There may be short-term rental contingencies in place. Many of them cap the minimum at 30 days. You may not be able to have pets. You may not be able to have multiple pets. You may not be able to have a pet over a certain size or weightage. You may not be able to post a flag. I mean, this goes across the laws on posting flags are very unique across states, but there are laws. There are laws literally related to whether or not you can hoist a flag within your property, whether it's in an HOA or not. And that is, you have to go through your state, through your local, and then to your HOA municipalities and understand the three phases of that governance, because at times HOAs actually have laws that are in direct contradiction of state laws, and state law trumps HOA law at that point. And I'm not a lawyer, and none of this is legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. So if you have questions about your specific case, or if you want legal advice, you go to an HOA lawyer that is specified in HOA law within your state. Okay. So we'll move on. This is a very unique article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Buckhead HOA settles fight to maintain historic Black cemetery. The legal fight over Piney Grove Cemetery, a historic African American burial ground tucked behind a large Buckhead condominium complex, is over. A Fulton County Superior Judge approved a settlement between the Bluffs at Lenox Homeowners Association and the Friends of Piney Grove Cemetery Incorporated. Comes weeks after Judge ruled that the Homeowners Association had a legal duty to maintain the cemetery grounds and to allow descendants and members of the public to access it. When a tract of land has been dedicated as a cemetery, it is perpetually devoted to the burial of the dead and may not be appropriated to any other purpose. Written by McBurney. Citing long-standing Georgia law. Both sides agreed that the HOA will give Friends of Piney Grove Cemetery incorporated an undisclosed amount to pay for the restoration and maintenance of the cemetery. The HOA cannot disturb the area with any new development and must remove a no trespassing sign from where it is currently located to avoid confusion. Wow. The public will be allowed to access the cemetery from dawn to dusk and can work to restore graves and clean the area. That is wild. An HOA that owns a cemetery, a historical black cemetery in Fulton County in Georgia. The legacy of Piney Grove. Once part of a thriving 19th century black community in what is now Buckhead, Piney Grove Cemetery served residents of several neighboring settlements, including Linwood Park and Johnsontown. Church congregation relocated to Decatur, but the cemetery remained on its original land, even as nearby properties were sold. The cemetery is home to over 300 burials, some of which are unmarked. The Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation believes that some of those who were buried in the area may have been slaves. Developers promised in 2000s to preserve and maintain the site as a condition of rezoning, but descendants say that commitments were never honored. Overgrown and inaccessible with fallen trees and trash damaging many of the graves. Piney Grove Cemetery is a direct link to a time in Georgia when enslaved individuals were forced to toil in fields and homes. Piney Grove Cemetery serves as an important marker for Atlanta's history, and its preservation is essential to the city's cultural fabric. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me is that an HOA owns the land and can't do anything with the land. At that point, as a homeowner association, I don't know the laws Georgia has, but I would look to sell it to the city and see if you could, sell that land. I mean, if you could do something with the cemetery, and it's understandable you can't. It's a historical black cemetery, and I guess this judge had his own point, but I'm not sure if that was in the cards because I believe that the question was if they wanted to redevelop the land, and that was not permitted according to how I interpreted that article. The judge said it must be preserved according to a very old Georgia law, and if it must be preserved, I would not want to preserve it as a homeowner association. As a homeowner association, if you actually own that land, which is a state historical black cemetery in Georgia, you try and sell that to the city and say, hey, or to the state and say, hey, we get it, we respect it. We would actually love to have a well-maintained historical monument near our home, but it seems like this is a better ownership piece. This is a better piece of property that if it must be maintained for the local government. Hopefully you could sell that to the city or the state and they would be able to I mean, that could actually happen. Okay. Well, that was a very interesting story, and I think I'm going to end it on that. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you all are having a great week. It's hump day Wednesday. It's a day to enjoy.